A cold mist draped over Evergreen Valley Cemetery that October morning. The sun had yet to crest the mountains, but Dr. Maya Chen was already passing through the iron gates, a travel coffee mug warming her hands. At 25, these early morning walks had become her ritual, a quiet moment of solitude before the rush of her day at the veterinary clinic. Something felt off. The peaceful silence was interrupted by low, unfamiliar growls from the northern section of the cemetery. Maya recognized them instantly. Shadow, the beloved black and white shepherd mix who had been the town's unofficial guardian for the past 5 years. "Shadow?" Maya called softly, her breath forming mist in the crisp dawn air. The dog who had sat beside her through sleepless nights after grueling surgeries, who gently guided lost children home, who attended every town event with a wagging tail, was now standing rigid over a fresh grave, his hackles raised. Evergreen Valley wasn't just any mountain town. Nestled deep in the Rockies, it was the kind of place where everyone knew one another, where community mattered. And Shadow had been part of that community ever since Dr. Catherine Williams, Maya's mentor, had rescued him from a storm drain as a puppy. Even after Catherine's passing 2 years ago, Shadow had continued her legacy, watching over the town like a silent protector. Maya took a cautious step forward. Shadow's head snapped toward her, his eyes wild with an urgency she had never seen before. This wasn't aggression. This was desperation. The ground beneath his paws was freshly disturbed, dirt scattered around a crude wooden marker. He alternated between scratching at the earth and staring at Maya with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Easy, boy," Maya whispered, her veterinary instincts clashing with a growing sense of unease. Shadow had never behaved like this. Not during thunderstorms, not during the wildfire evacuation last summer, not even during Catherine's funeral. Something was buried in that grave, something Shadow was desperate for her to find, and every fiber of his being was focused on making her understand. The rising sun cast long shadows across the weathered headstones, and in that eerie light, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She reached for her phone, knowing that whatever Shadow had uncovered, she wouldn't be able to handle it alone. As she stepped closer, Shadow's stance grew even more alarming. Gone was his usual friendly demeanor. His muscles were tense, his growls low and insistent. He wasn't just guarding the grave. He was protecting her from something. The wooden marker bore no name, just a rough cross thrust into the freshly turned dirt. "What is it, boy? What did you find?" Maya kept her voice calm, but Shadow refused to let her come any closer. Each time she tried, he blocked her path, his normally soft brown eyes burning with fierce determination. The morning fog curled around the tombstones like ghostly fingers. Fallen leaves skittered across the ground, rustling in the cold breeze, making Maya flinch at every sound. Something wasn't right. No new graves were supposed to be dug this week. She knew because Catherine had taught her to keep track of cemetery schedules to help grieving pet owners visit their buried companions. Shadow's behavior became more frantic. He would dig at the earth, then run to Maya, then back to the grave, like he was trying to tell her something urgent. His growls mixed with whimpers, a sound of pure distress that made the hair on Maya's neck stand up. Time seemed to freeze in the gray morning light. The only sounds were Shadow's increasingly desperate barks echoing off the surrounding mountains, and the soft thud of dirt as his paws struck the grave. Maya noticed something else strange. There were no flowers, no signs that anyone had properly buried a loved one here. Her hands shaking slightly, Maya pulled out her phone again. First to call the cemetery caretaker, then the police. Whatever Shadow had found, it was clear this was no ordinary grave. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising a storm. But Shadow stood his ground, guardian of a secret that needed to be uncovered before it was too late. Detective Sarah Martinez's patrol car pulled up to the cemetery gates just as the first onlookers began to gather. Her sharp eyes took in the scene: the agitated dog, the concerned vet, the anxious groundskeeper, and what was clearly becoming the talk of Evergreen Valley. "Dr. Chen, Mr. Walker." Martinez nodded, her badge catching the weak morning light. "Tell me everything." As they explained, more cars began parking along the cemetery's iron fence. Whispers spread through the growing crowd. 3 break-ins at the tech company up on Hill Road, that missing delivery truck last week, and now this, Martinez muttered, jotting notes. Something's not right in our town lately." She turned to address the gathering crowd, her voice firm but calm. "Folks, please stay back. This is now an active investigation scene." The detective's phone buzzed constantly as she worked to get emergency excavation permits. "The judge needs probable cause," she explained, frustration evident in her voice. "We can't just dig up a grave without proper authorization, even if it looks suspicious." Time crawled by. Shadow's anxiety seemed to grow with each passing minute. The once gentle dog now paced in tight circles, his barks becoming more urgent. He'd occasionally stop to press his ear against the ground, then look up at the humans with increasingly desperate eyes. "How long for the permits?" Maya asked, watching Shadow's distress. "Could be hours," Martinez replied, already dialing another number. "Unless..." She paused, watching Shadow's behavior closely. As a police canine handler herself, she recognized the signs. "Unless we can prove immediate danger." Dr. Chen, as a veterinary expert, would you say this dog's behavior indicates a life-threatening situation? Maya stood straighter, her professional confidence clear. "Without a doubt, this is textbook distress signaling. Shadow is telling us someone needs help, now." Martinez nodded grimly and made one final call. Within minutes, sirens echoed through the valley as emergency response vehicles approached. Whatever secret lay beneath that hastily dug grave wouldn't stay buried much longer. The excavation began under floodlights as dark clouds threatened rain overhead. Emergency crews worked carefully but quickly, removing layers of earth while Shadow watched every movement. His barks had turned to anxious whimpers, his eyes never leaving the deepening hole. "We've hit something," a rescuer shouted. The sound of metal striking wood echoed through the cemetery. Everyone froze, even Shadow, as they brushed away the last layer of dirt to reveal a crude wooden coffin. Detective Martinez coordinated with the medical team standing by. "On my count, 1, 2, 3. They lifted the lid and gasps rippled through the emergency workers. Inside lay a young man, pale but alive, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "He's breathing! Get him out, now!" The paramedics rushed in. As they lifted him, Maya noticed something remarkable. A small gap in the coffin's corner, lined with muddy paw prints. Scattered around the boy's head were bits of wet leaves and small twigs, damp with morning dew. "Shadow," Maya whispered, understanding dawning. "He kept him alive. He must have brought him water using those wet leaves, right through that crack he dug." The dog's strange behavior suddenly made perfect sense. He hadn't just found the victim, he'd been keeping him alive all night. The young man, later identified as Marcus Chen, was quickly transferred to a stretcher. As soon as he was above ground, Shadow's entire demeanor changed. The fierce protector suddenly became gentle again, trotting alongside the stretcher, his tail wagging softly. Marcus's hand dropped to the side of the stretcher, and Shadow gently nuzzled it. The tech prodigy's eyes fluttered open briefly, meeting those of his four-legged savior. The paramedics worked quickly to stabilize him, but they couldn't help smiling at Shadow's transformation from determined guardian to gentle companion. "Stay with him," Maya told Shadow as they loaded Marcus into the ambulance. She didn't need to. The dog had already jumped in, settling quietly beside the stretcher, ready to watch over his charge all the way to the hospital. In a sleek Silicon Valley office, James Chen stared at his phone in disbelief. His son was alive. His hands shook as security footage played on the massive screen behind his desk, showing how it all began 3 days ago. Marcus, at just 18, had created a breakthrough AI security system for his father's company, Chen Tech Solutions. His code could detect cyber attacks faster than anything on the market. That's when the threat started. The footage showed Marcus working late at the Chen Tech lab, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he perfected the security system. Unknown to him, someone was watching. A rival tech company, Red Hawk Industries, had been losing clients to Chen Tech's innovations. They were desperate, and Marcus's new code was their breaking point. A rival tech company, desperate to steal the code, hired local criminals to kidnap Marcus. But they didn't expect his response. "I won't help you steal my father's work," Marcus had told them, even as they threatened him. "I'd rather die than betray my family." Detective Martinez's investigation revealed the dark connection. The kidnapping crew's leader, Mike Dawson, had grown up in Evergreen Valley. He knew the cemetery's quiet location, its lack of security cameras, its distance from Silicon Valley. The perfect place to send a message. "They wanted to scare us," James said during his statement to the FBI. "They buried my son alive to force us to hand over the code." His voice cracked. They didn't count on a stray dog being smarter than their entire operation. The evidence mounted quickly. Security cameras from the town's only gas station caught the kidnappers' van at 2 a.m. ATM footage showed them withdrawing cash using stolen cards. Their digital trail revealed connections to Red Hawk Industries, encrypted emails, offshore payments, and secret meetings. But their biggest mistake was choosing Evergreen Valley. They thought the small town would keep their secret. Instead, the tight-knit community became their undoing. Local shopkeepers remembered suspicious customers. A motel owner recalled late-night comings and goings. And most importantly, they hadn't noticed Shadow watching from the shadows as they carried out their cruel plan. The investigation uncovered a complex web of corporate espionage. Red Hawk had hired professional criminals who then recruited local accomplices in Evergreen Valley. They used an abandoned cabin just outside town as their base, thinking no one would look twice at out-of-towners fixing up an old property. James Chen watched as FBI agents led the suspects away from their hideout. The kidnappers had been so focused on high-tech security and covering their digital tracks, they never imagined their perfect plan would be undone by a dog's loyalty and a small town's determination to uncover the truth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus's AI security system had helped track down his own kidnappers, analyzing surveillance footage and financial transactions faster than human investigators could. But in the end, it was Shadow's simple devotion that had saved the young tech prodigy's life. As news of the arrest broke, James Chen made a decision that would change everything, not just for his family, but for the entire town of Evergreen Valley. The hospital room glowed with morning sunlight as Marcus Chen saw his father's face for the first time in days. Words weren't needed. Their tight embrace said everything. Shadow sat quietly beside the bed, his tail gently wagging at their reunion. 1 month later, Evergreen Valley transformed. James Chen, moved by the town's role in saving his son, announced Chen Tech's new headquarters would be built there, bringing jobs and opportunity to the community. But the biggest change came with the creation of the Shadow Foundation, a multi-million-dollar animal welfare organization. The foundation built state-of-the-art shelters across the country, all inspired by a stray dog's incredible act of kindness. When offered a luxurious life in Silicon Valley, Shadow did what he'd always done. He stayed in Evergreen Valley, watching over his town. You can still see him making his daily rounds, the proud guardian who reminded everyone that heroes come in all forms. If this story of loyalty and courage touched your heart, hit that subscribe button now. Join our community of animal lovers and never miss another incredible tale of four-legged heroes. Click the bell icon for notifications and leave a comment telling us what Shadow's bravery means to you. Remember, sometimes the biggest hearts come in furry packages. See you in our next amazing story.